بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Alhamdulillah. My dear respected brothers and sisters who are following the class of Aqeedah Sanusiyyah. Today I apologize for those who are following live. I started really late today, and because of some many errands that I was in. And also I cannot have lesson long today, but inshallah ta'ala our lesson today will be a bit of revision, and inshallah to mention some of the things. So what I'll do is I will summarize some many of the things that we are going to speak about today, inshallah ta'ala. So last week we were speaking about the impossibility of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have motives in his actions. So we spoke about the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We spoke about the sifat salbiyah, and we spoke about ma'ani, and we spoke about the impossibility of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not to have such attributes. And then after that we spoke a lot about the meaning of al-istighna, that Allah is not in need of anything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need of anything, and if he has a beginning, meaning he is in need of a mukhassis, yani the originator who bring him into existence, and that is impossible. If he is what you call it, in a state anywhere, he has an ending, and likewise, and he is contingent, and all any contingencies, as what we mentioned, are iftikar, are in need of the muhdith, yani the one who brought it into existence. So we say that the one of the meanings of the meaning of la ilaha illallah is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need is not in need of anything, whereas everything other than Allah is in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yani Allah is the one who brought everything into existence. So other than Allah, do not have any power in them, and the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not have any motive, and we spoke a bit about this. Different from our actions, and our actions have motive, and for example, you go out to work, and so that you get a salary, so you're putting in efforts to going to work, and because you are in need of something else. Likewise, when you put effort to study, for example, you are in need of the knowledge. So our actions are basically binded by motives, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his actions is not binded by motives. So we cannot be saying that Allah created us because he is in need of us. That is impossible. That is the attribute of contingent beings. Contingent beings are in need. Their actions they have motives behind. So inshallah, without wasting any more time, we will go back into our book. So what I remembered in our last lesson, we were in the beginning of page 188. So this is where we were speaking about the motive earlier. Then he mentioned it follows from his self-sufficiency. So again, we are speaking, the author is speaking about self-sufficiency, al-istighna. Yani Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need of anything, and he is self-sufficient. That this is the meaning basically. That is, it is not any incumbent upon him to do any contingently possible thing, be it the act of bringing into existence, bringing into non-existence, or leaving it. Were it incumbent upon. Now the author is speaking about that it is not wajib upon Allah to do something. It is not wajib upon Allah, meaning something else cannot make it incumbent upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to perform something. That is impossible. This is the point of difference between the Ahlul Sunnah and the Mu'tazilah. Ahlul Sunnah mention nothing can enforce Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whereas the Mu'tazilah, they say that there are things that is wajib upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, last time we spoke about the sending of prophets and messengers, the Mu'tazilah mentioned that it is wajib upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send prophets and messengers, otherwise human beings will be in astray, because they speak about tahsin and taqbih, that if Allah do not send prophets and messengers to human beings, they will be led astray, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what you call it wants any goodness for them, and so on and so forth. Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah mentioned that it is impossible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uh, it is impossible any for Allah any to be enforced any with something. It is impossible any for Allah, for example, they need to for us any to say it is wajib any for him to make a person enter Jannah. Yani people enter Jannah by the mercy any of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that nothing can be enforced any to Allah or towards Allah or be made wajib for Allah to do any a particular yani action. So this is basically what the author yani is saying. So he said that were it incumbent any upon him to do anything, and if something were to make incumbent upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what will happen? He said, were it incumbent any upon him to do anything from the contingent possibilities, such as the act of granting reward, the act any of granting any reward, and a person any does amal saleh, is it wajib any upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give him reward? The answer is no, it is not any wajib any upon Allah, but Allah gives. But this giving any of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala towards any that person that does any amal saleh, it is from the fadl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is from any the bounty of Allah. You see, it is from the bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you perform any prayers, and for example, Allah bless you with rewards for your prayers. But this blessing any of rewards, it is from any the bounty of Allah, not something that is enforced to Allah. So we cannot any be saying that it is our right any that we have our rewards for the fact that we have placed in our efforts any to perform and act any of obedience. So I hope any it is clear, inshallah. So he says, such as any the act of granting reward. Any meaning Ahlul Sunnah is saying that it is not wajib any upon Allah any to grant any rewards. It is from His mercy and bounty. It's from His fadl. In Arabic, and we call it everything and good and it comes in from Allah. فَمِنْ فَضْلِهِ and His punishments is from وَمِنْ عَدْلِهِ. So we have any fadl of Allah and adl of Allah. Yani Allah bless you with rewards based on His fadl, and punish any people any based on His justice. So we cannot any ascribe also injustice any to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because everything is owned any by Allah. Then any he mentioned, yeah, we are in this page. Let's see. I was reading here earlier. So now when we look at this, yani he said now it's basically this is any a thing any about ulama when they rebut the Mu'tazilah, because this is a point of difference between us and them. Then he says, such as the act of granting reward, looking after what is of benefit and most advantageous. Looking any after what is of benefit and most advantageous. Any meaning, if there is something any of benefit, it is wajib any upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is it wajib any upon Allah to perform any what is best any for human beings? It is wajib. Is it wajib for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give any goodness any to people? Any, for example, the Mu'tazilah say yes, and it is wajib. The Mu'tazilah say yes, and it is wajib. Ahlul Sunnah again, and he mentioned that it is nothing can be made obligatory any upon Allah. So this is something which is general, and nothing any can make something wajib any upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is a principle any in Ahlul Sunnah. It is important for us any to memorize any this principle, because not only any we are speaking about our rebuttal towards the Mu'tazilah, but this is a principle any in life. A lot of people nowadays any they are asking any the question why any people are suffering, any for example there is calamities and so on, and there is goodness, and all, at the same time any there is evil. So people are confused, and people are questioning any why any all of these things any happens. And one of the ways any to understand any is to learn any about Aqeedah, to learn any about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to learn any about the concept any of ibtila, that Allah any is testing any human beings, and Allah is testing any prophets, and so on and so forth. So everything any happens any by His will, meaning nothing is made obligatory any upon Him. And sending of the messengers, that's what I mentioned, it's not wajib any for Allah to send messengers. Yani imagine any if Allah does not send Adam and Nuh and Ibrahim and all of the messengers, that is possible any for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is not any wajib, not wajib any for Allah any to send any prophets any and messengers. And then any he mentioned peace and blessings any upon them. He the sublime and majestic would have been in need of those things in order to complete himself any with them. Yani when we say something is made any obligatory any upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning Allah yani is not complete, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yani is not complete. For example, yani if a person like the Mu'tazilah yani, for example, they are saying that it is wajib for Allah yani to send any prophets and messengers any to human beings. Wajib. Otherwise, any human beings will be left astray. So it is wajib upon Allah, that Allah must send. So when we say that something is be made obligatory upon Allah, na'udzubillah min dhalik, meaning Allah is not perfect, that He is in need of, that He is binded by something else to perform. So this is impossible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Would have been in need of those things in order to complete Himself with them. Yani, if Allah does not send, and we say wajib upon Allah to send any messengers, and if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not send any, meaning Allah is not complete because He is leaving His creations for something that will cause them to be astray. So it shows as what we mentioned, incompleteness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hence it follows that nothing is incumbent upon Him save that which is a completion for Him. However, it is impossible for Him to be in need. So we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need, and nothing can enforce to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because if that happens, then Allah is not perfect. That He is in need of something else to make Himself be in perfection. So this goes to the same point as what we mentioned, that He is not in need. How can He be in need when He is self-sufficient and free of needing anything? This is the same thing that we have been mentioning. The concept where the author speaks about La ilaha illallah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yastaghni an kulli shay, that Allah is not in need of anything. So it is impossible for Allah to be in need of something other than Him. If it is proven that nothing is incumbent upon Him, it follows necessarily that either doing or leaving something is possible for Him. So at the end of the day, what we are saying, that His actions are jais, not wajib. The actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is possible and not necessary. The actions of Allah. If the actions of Allah is necessary, meaning it is incumbent for Him. Clear, inshallah? So the Ahlul Sunnah point of view is that the actions of Allah is possible, meaning He can do it or He not do it. He can send messengers or not send messengers. This is the meaning of jais, that's what we mentioned. He can make a person enter Jannah or Nar. If He makes a person enter Jannah, bifadlihi, it is from His mercy. If He makes a person, na'udzubillah min zalik, enter the Jahannam, it is from adlihi, it's from His justice. So He can do this and He can do it. Nothing is made incumbent for Him. This is the meaning when you say that the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is possible. So I hope it is clear. I hope it is clear inshallah ta'ala. Then he go back again to speak about some of the other attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He goes on to speak about al-haya, the life of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then he mentioned all of this is an explanation of how the entire doctrine fits under self-sufficiency. The entire doctrine explain about the self-sufficiency of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the meaning as what we mentioned based on iltizam, that Allah is ghani. As for all others beside Him being in need of Him, it rationally necessitates that He, the exalted, is living. So when we understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need of anything, that He is self-sufficient, other than Him is in need of Him, and He is the one who brought everything into existence, the one who ordains everything, the one who does everything, then we understand that He is living, that He is all living. This is basically what the author mentioned. Were not He be described with life, nothing will be in need of, nothing will be in need of Him. And if Allah is not ascribed with the attribute of al-haya, nothing can be in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it will necessitate that Allah does not exist. Because one who is dead, were He not ascribed with life, nothing will be in need of Him, because one who is dead cannot bring anything into existence. Something that is non-existence cannot bring anything else into existence, because it itself is non-existent. So that is why it is impossible. And nothing stands in need of Him, because if we say na'udzubillah that God does not exist, so it will necessitate that we say that nothing is in need of Him, since He is in non-existence. So it is impossible to negate that everything is in need any of him the exalted, because he has been affirmed for him both rationally and textually, as what any we mentioned. It is found any in the statement Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, this dalil any from the Quran, dalil naqli, where he said, Ya ayuhan nas antumul fukara'u ilallah. This particular verse, and he clearly mentioned that we are in need any of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we are fukara, the plural fakir. Rationally, it is found in the proof any for oneness, because it proves that there is no other God besides him. We spoke any about the dalil aqli any pertaining any to wahdaniyah. We spoke about burhanu tamanu, and if you remember that what you call it, it is impossible any that God any is more than one. So all this any is very very any important, very very crucial. I hope any those any who are learning this, it is important any that we understand, especially the proofs any pertaining to al-qidam, and also proofs any pertaining to wahdaniyah. These two are the one of the two of the most any important arguments any that is presented any by ilmul kalam, which is important any for all of us inshallah ta'ala to be to understand it any very well. So today any I have to stop here any because any of some errands any I have to do. So inshallah ta'ala we will continue next week. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.